reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will.
Do you support defunding and removing police from American communities?
Tell us what defund the police means.
My community's been being defunded for decades now. We're one of the only communities in the country that has a police department just for our school district. The students in my school district have to share books. In my community, there aren't full-service grocery stores. There isn't access to healthcare and hospitals. My community apportions more than 40% of our general budget to policing, and I see police getting tanks and other kinds of military weapons, and yet my neighbors can't find affordable housing.
This is the most obscene use of taxpayer dollars.
The economic problem is probably the most serious problem confronting the Negro community, and I might say the most serious problem confronting poor people generally. And I think the time has come to bring to bear the power of the direct action, the nonviolent direct action movement, on the basic economic conditions that we face all over the country.
People who supported us in Selma, in Birmingham, were really outraged about the extremist behavior toward Negroes. But they were not at that moment, and they are not now, committed to genuine equality for Negroes. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income, for instance, to get rid of poverty for Negroes and all poor people.
Dr. King laid out a framework for how America not only survives this century, but thrives. And that includes a minimum income. It includes reparations, a common tradition all over the world. Reparations were made in Europe after World War I and World War II. Israel exists because of reparations. If Black Americans had been paid for their labor during slavery, they would have trillions in the bank. And that's convenient, because we have trillions. This isn't just about repairing what's broken, but investing in our future, like President Lincoln did in the second year of the Civil War when he gave away 160 acres of land to anybody who wasn't a Confederate, to uplift the economic power of the country. President Kennedy called it the largest stimulus package in U.S. history, and it wasn't a one-time payment. The Homestead Acts gave away land year after year, all the way up to the 1970s, hundreds of millions of acres.
But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farms.
10% of the real estate in our country was given away by our government. The National Park Service estimates that about 93 million people, more than a quarter of the adult U.S. population, are descendants of those who got free real estate from homesteading, a policy initially vetoed by the Confederates, but Lincoln pushed it through, so everybody could have the means and opportunity of uplifting their condition.
And they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps.
But Native Americans didn't get compensated. Their land was stolen, and they were forced onto reservations. And for Black Americans, the history has been the same. Violence, intimidation, and outright theft have left Black America, who make up 13.5% of our population, with the lowest home ownership rates and less than 1% of rural land.
I think we are in a new era, a new phase of the struggle, where we have moved from a struggle for decency, which characterized our struggle for 10 or 12 years, to a struggle for genuine equality.
Our Native, Black, and Brown communities suffer the most in America's caste system, extreme inequality, and lack of social mobility, which hasn't changed much since the 1970s. Whites make up 60% of our total population. And even though they're proportionally the most economically advantaged, because of their sheer numbers, they have twice the total numbers in poverty. Altogether, that's tens of millions of people locked out of opportunity, the first to bear the brunt of the pandemic.
People don't really understand it until you actually see it.
And the global climate emergency already underway.
Now we are confronting issues that cannot be solved without costing the nation billions of dollars. Now, I think this is where we're getting our greatest resistance. They may put it on many other things, but we can't get rid of slums and poverty without it costing the nation something.
This nation is asking for action, and action now.
It's been one of my dreams that we would come together and realize our common problems, all working together to solve the problem of poverty.